The following is a presentation of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
From the birthplace of modern winemaking, Sonoma, California, welcome to The Winemakers. Local experts Sam Couturi, Bart Hansen, and Brian Casey, along with host John Myers, invite you to listen in as they discuss all facets of winemaking. So sit back, pour yourself a glass, and let's hear what the guys have to say this week.
Waiting.
I thought we were ready.
Ooh. John's not here, so it's not quite.
The inmates have taken over the asylum.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Winemakers. Good morning.
That pour came all the way from the southern hemisphere, Brian.
From the southern hemisphere.
Long pour.
Where isn't it interesting that they're just kicking off harvest?
Yeah. And it's rainy and misty.
Right. Here in Sonoma, yeah. Harvest is not even on our minds currently.
Pruning.
You wouldn't want to be harvesting in there.
No. Fortunately, it doesn't happen that often.
We kind of a cool thing today. We're reaching down south. We're going to try some wines from Chile.
I was going to say Temecula? Like how far south?
No, we're going even further, Sam. We're digging deep. We've got Ben Gordon from J. Bouchon, and also Bella Pearson from Vine Connections this year. Thank you for the connection. With getting Ben here, and Ben's in town doing some tastings at restaurants. They're actually doing a winemaker dinner tonight in Maule Valley. If the show was on today, we'd advertise it for you, but I'm sure it was an amazing event.
It was 3 weeks ago, and everybody really enjoyed themselves.
We can assure it was amazing.
So well.
It was unbelievable.
Great time had
You really do wish you would have been there for that last course, too.
Yeah.
Boy, that last course was amazing.
So welcome, guys. Welcome to Sonoma.
Thank you.
And Bella, why don't you start and kick it off? Let us know a little bit about Vine Connections, what you guys do, and why you're hanging out with Ben today.
Yeah, absolutely. So Vine Connections is a South American and sake importer. That's what we started as.
Stop right there for a second, because when you say sake in South America, I'm a little confused.
I know.
Okay.
I know. So they started South American first, Chile and Argentina, and this was started back in, I believe it was 1997, by Nick Ramkowski and Ed, blanking on his last name.
Oh, you're fired.
Ed.
I know. Just fire me now, Nick.
He's not listening.
So they started importing South American wines, and then I think it was a year or two down the road, they were approached to import some sake, and they figured, why not? There wasn't a ton going on with sake in the States, so they decided to start importing. So that's what.
How long ago was that?
That was in 2000. Yeah. So they've been doing it for a while now. And then just about a year ago, they brought in an Italian portfolio.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. It just caught me off guard.
No, it's okay. No worries.
Right. Because the sake is not from Chile. We're talking about...
Japanese, real sake.
Okay.
But yeah, it's very interesting, like explaining that to people. They're like, how do these two things come together?
I mean, if there's a need, you fulfill the need, right?
Yeah. I mean, sake has been growing exponentially. Like it was huge last year compared to our wine sales. Like,
interesting.
Yeah.
Well, there's also, think of like in the last 25 years, the sake transformation from like the shitty hot sake at the après ski bar when you're underage. I have no experience with that part. To like, even like, shopping center sushi restaurants now have like a 4-page sake list with interesting stuff on it. So there's definitely been, room for upward trajectory there from that dispenser next to the Jägermeister machine.
Totally. Yeah. And so have you become like a sake expert?
Oh yeah, I'm obsessed with sake.
She's just come back from Japan.
Yeah, I got back on Saturday from Japan.
Nice.
Yeah.
We all just got gifts, or some of us did. I don't know if you did, Sam. We got one of our employees, Tristan, just was in Japan for 3 weeks and brought back sake for us.
Super generously bought us some stuff at the duty-free store on his way home.
I was thinking it was probably from the airport.
Always the best selection of sake.
Totally. It was a little sample pack. I'm excited to break into it. But you're like, yeah, I see you. Didn't want to carry that shit around for this whole trip. I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Bella.
Let's just table that and bring Stella back for
Sake.
Bella, bring Bella back for
Stella
for
Blue
sake. Would you
sake.
be willing to do that sometime?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
definitely.
That was a good one.
Yeah, so like I was saying, South American importers. So Ben is one of our suppliers, and he is in the market. So we are hitting the streets of San Francisco later today and tomorrow. Gonna go sell some wine.
Yeah, I've been in the States for coming on 10 days already. So I started in Massachusetts, down in Florida, was in Texas until late last night, and flew in this morning.
So where's home?
So I'm originally from the UK, as you can probably tell, but I've lived in Chile for 20 years.
Okay.
So I'm every day getting more and more Latino. Still can't dance.
Can you eat peppers still?
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of, I just, I dance if I'm told to dance. I jump if I'm told to jump. That's kind of the way I roll. But yeah, I've lived in Chile for a long time. I've worked in wine for 24 years. So I started off working in London. But I'm one of these, maybe a slightly sadomasochist who's been trying to push slightly more premium, more interesting Chile for the majority of those 20 years.
Right.
I did start working for a larger winery, which was a great schooling. I was selling a lot of wine into big retail back
Concha?
in my homeland.
Who were you working
No, I was working
with?
for Santa Carolina.
Yeah.
Do you
So
ever run across Rodrigo Soto?
I do know the name.
Yeah.
I do know the name.
He's a friend of the pod.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Awesome. Well, hi, Rodrigo, if you're listening. But yeah, I'm still British passport holder, but I'm definitely probably 50-50 in terms of, how I feel and the way I work. And I'm completely fluent in Spanish. I speak a bit of French as well.
Did you speak Spanish when you got there?
I did, but I spoke Spanish, not Chilean.
Right.
So I don't know if you guys are aware, but I always
basically a different language.
I always and forgive me if there are any Australians listening, but I'm a Brit, so I can be rude to them. But basically, I always say the Chileans speak Spanish like the Aussies speak English. Just massacre, basically. So a lot of shortened words, a lot of if a word can't get any shorter, they'll still make it shorter, and a lot of slang, a hell of a lot of slang.
Yeah.
So I came there with my good Castilian Spanish from college, and realized that I wasn't going to survive. There's actually a book in Chile you can buy called How to Survive in the Chilean Jungle, which has all the slang words, which is pretty crazy.
When you moved from England or the UK to Chile, had you been there?
I had been there for a year. I was an English teacher, so part of my college studies, I spent a year abroad because I was majoring in languages. So I was an English teacher for a year. I'll be honest, basically when I left, one of my students wrote in a card saying, I really loved all your teaching, but you did smell of booze on the Saturday morning classes. So yeah, wine has always been a part of my
Who's
mantra.
taking class on Saturday morning anyway?
Well, and who's giving it? Me. I don't know why.
Right.
Not
Just
after-
sounds like a
Judging
bad
people's
idea.
Friday nights on Saturday morning is really the problem.
So yeah, apologies for any students listening.
Get
but,
thee
yeah,
to the
that's what
nunnery.
That was what I was about. But so that was my way into Chile, and I'll be honest as well. I chose Chile purely on the kind of adventure side, like it was the country I knew least about. I could have gone to somewhere like Nicaragua, but I also wanted to go somewhere that had a sense of a little bit safer. I was still a conservative Brit.
Right.
Yeah.
Just decided that kind of it was between Chile and Argentina. I'm a big soccer fan, so I decided not Argentina for Maradona and ended up in Chile. And then went back to England, finished my studies, and then fell into wine like a lot of people. It wasn't necessarily my plan. But because I was a linguist, they were looking for someone on the commercial side for a magazine. So I was in charge of all the sort of print advertising sales. And then I went back to Chile to study the Chilean wine scene with the editor. And I tapped up some of the people I'd seen like 4 years ago, and one of them is now my wife. So yeah, I always say I'm in Chile for the love of a woman and many wines, and not the other way around because that would be dangerous. So yeah.
Wait, many one.
You hear me? Yeah, exactly. So
you wouldn't be here talking to us today.
Exactly. So
was there a culture shock there?
A little bit, but I guess I think that the biggest culture shock is actually, I would say, is definitely obviously when you start working in Chile. There is a different sort of it's not as speedy and fast as the UK would be. There's a little bit more of that mañana culture, but once you understand that, Chile is still very professional. It's a very well-run country in every sense of the word. But there definitely is an element of, I now learn over time, examples. Even if you're in a happy hour, you're in a bar, and people will often say "vamos," let's go. I used to get up and walk towards the door, and then you realize that meant that someone's probably going to get another round in, and you're going to be going within the next hour. So me being a Brit, if someone says "let's go," you leave. That's what I understand by "let's go."
Right.
So that's an example of it. And also, meetings. If someone says 10, just turn up at the meeting room when you can see 90% of the capacities in there. Those are kind of, that's the best way to work. And that's no disrespect to Chile. That's just the way it works.
Right,
you know?
It's the culture.
Yeah, exactly. But they are much better timekeepers than anywhere else in Latin America. I would say that as well.
And they had no problem with you being from the UK as long as you weren't from Argentina, right?
Yeah, yeah. There's some rivalry there. Definitely, there is some rivalry. Healthy rivalry, I would say. But yeah, and I guess for me, because I did speak the lingo, and because at that time in particular, Chile has always been very outward looking as an exporter. So someone who they felt would understand the UK market better, I think was an important, that was kind of what was a door opener for me. I was in my early 20s, it was a little bit of a kind of, see what happens. Yeah. I'm a big believer, just follow your dreams and no one's going to judge you if you come back and say it didn't work out. I was lucky it did work out, but I did literally bought a one-way ticket when I first moved to Chile, which you can't do anymore because of immigration processes. But at that time you could. So it was a little bit crazy, but I was very fortunate. Santa Carolina gave me that chance. Worked there for 5 years. Amazing schooling because it's a big winery. So in big wineries, you're exposed to a lot of pressure, but also everything happens, like good and bad. And then I decided to branch out. I was becoming a little bit of a UK specialist, and the UK is a tough market. It's very volume driven. I was doing a lot of deals without opening bottles, and I was like, come on, I love wine. Right. Excel spreadsheets are for selling anything. Right. Wine you sell by popping a cork, or popping a screw cap or whatever. But so that's why
my first boss said to me, he goes, "Look at the end of the day what we've produced. We've produced a bottle of wine that you can go home and enjoy with your friends and family, as opposed to if you were manufacturing paper towels and at the end of the day all you do is have a roll of paper towels."
Yeah.
Exactly. I like paper towels.
I do too. It's just not the same as much as
you're right. It's not the same.
How would you blind judge them? That's the question.
You could based on feel,
wiping up wine,
absorption rate, smell. In those rare occasions where an emergency where you need to blow your nose with a paper towel, there's some that will really mess you up.
Just need to make a note of those brands, though, right?
Exactly right.
Next time I try to interject that story, I'm going to use something other than paper towels.
Widgets, widgets, Bart.
I completely hear you, though. Absolutely. But I also speak to friends of mine and say at the same time, it's a challenging industry because at the end of the day, when you present a wine, if a buyer doesn't like it, there's not so much you can push back with, because it's subjective. So that's the challenge.
How about half price?
Yeah. Well, I don't want to be controversial, but sometimes there are people who do my job and that's their only option.
Yeah.
So that's dangerous. So I still think there's a lot to be said for people who have passion and knowledge for wine, because at least they can defend it better than just with price.
Yeah.
So it's important to go in there with a few weapons rather than just price.
Yeah. Well, and let's talk about this first wine, because immediately on the nose I get minerality, which is great. I freaking love.
Yeah. So a little bit
Great
about
breakfast
Bouchon.
wine.
Yeah. This is awesome. This time of the day, actually. Just to wake up. But a little bit about Bouchon as well. So. Bouchon is the name Bouchon is the family. So Bouchon originated from Saint-Emilion, came over to Chile in the 1870s to start working as winemaker.
Wait, in the when? In the
1870s, 1872. Okay. Yeah. So originally had their own vineyards in the Colchagua area, which actually is still to this day some of the estates for Casa Silva, another winery in Chile. And then as the different generations came down, there was a separation. So one side of the family is the Casa Silva winery, which is also with Vine Connections, interestingly. And then the other side of the family was the Bouchon, and they moved to Maule. So we're in Maule with all of these wines today. And we're going to be focusing especially on the first three wines on Pais. So lesser known grape. I absolutely love the stuff. This is different Chile. I call it the B side of Chile. A lot of people will know Chile for Cabernet, for Carmenere, maybe Sauvignon Blanc. Don't get me wrong. I think we produce those brilliantly. Great value, definitely. But Pais is a totally different story. It's a way cooler idea. This is mission grape. So from Spain, Listan Prieto came over in the 1540s from left Spain. And now is not grown there.
Wait a minute. Can you clarify that? You're saying this is the same as what we call mission grape?
Yes, exactly. But this is a Blanco, so this is a Blanc de Noir Pais, or Blanc de Noir mission grape. So pretty unique. Most people are producing reds, so we'll be doing red Pais later, which is
Well, and did you catch the year that he said?
Yeah.
1540.
Right.
What were you doing back then in 1540? I mean, yeah.
I mean, 'cause
My people were in a cave in Tuscany or something. I'm not really sure.
isn't that crazy? And it was Spanish brought it over and sort of planted it in Mexico, Central, South America.
Some people talk about Mexico being the first kind of foray into the Americas. Other people I've heard talk about the Dominican Republic. I've not tried any wines from the Dominican Republic. I'm not sure if I'd like to, based on their tropics. But definitely, came through Mexico and then just worked its way south, and was widely planted. So Pais means country. That's why it's called Pais. It's just, it was like almost like the people's grape. It was the grape that everyone grew everywhere. It's vigorous. So it's an easy planter. You can plant it anywhere. But now, old vines, you get beautiful wines that have that sense of minerality.
Well, it's really big berried too. So it was food and wine farming, I think, right?
Yeah.
Can you, I don't know if, I have no idea of the sort of like geopolitical history of 1870 France and Chile, but what is Semillon winemaker leaving France heading to Chile? Like what's happening there in the world that makes that a decision that is something that happens?
Yeah, so I think if you look at the kind of history of Chilean winemaking in general, basically most people track it back, if you study it properly, is like 1851 is when kind of the wine history really started in Chile properly. That was a guy called Silvestre Ochagavia. He's actually linked to Santa Carolina to this day. And there was this kind of euphoria amongst magnates from, that were making a lot of money in mining, not dissimilar to Chile today, that suddenly said, hey, hold on. They were either traveling, they were actually getting over to Europe. They loved the kind of idea of the old school, wine scene. And they came back and they brought with them winemakers. They brought back with them even architects to make the wineries look like French chateaus, at least the underground cellars. So that all took place like between the 1850s and the 1890s. So that's why within that period, you've got Senor Bouchon or Monsieur Bouchon coming over and started things off for us in terms of the Bouchon history.
So some mining magnate or something basically recruited him to come to Chile and be a winemaker.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I don't know who that was, but that's obviously the first foray for us for a Bouchon member of the family was in 1872.
Fascinating.
Emile Bouchon.
And did they bring? So at Saint Emilion, they're bringing Merlot and Cab over.
Yeah, and that's definitely where the first plantings were as well. So definitely it was mainly, hence why Bordeaux varietals still dominate in Chile. And weirdly, even though Pais in a lot of cases is older vines, it's only been discovered more recently because a lot of it's in vineyards that were just for growers, so they weren't sort of attached to any brand. So they were just sold as grapes, and a lot of wines originally would have been just sort of field blends. So Cabernet might have had like 1 or 2% Pais, back in the day. Yeah. But then suddenly people are looking at the vines, and the vines themselves are insane. You're like, well, hold on, we could do something with this, storytelling point of view, but also the quality of the grapes as well. Yeah. Even though it's high vigor, because it's old vines, you actually get naturally low yields at the same time now with Pais. So you're getting wines that are way more complex.
And when you say old vines, what are you calling old?
100 to 120 years old for our Pais. Yeah, so even older than Carignan. Yeah. Carignan in Chile is traced back to normally the 1950s. Right. So it's normally 60 to 70-year-old vines for Carignan. But yeah, Pais is 100 to 120 years old. So it's bush vines. In our case, so this first wine is called our Pais Salvaje. So that's wild Pais. And it's called Wild Pais because if you actually look at the label here, there's a guy up on a ladder.
Yeah, I see that.
I always say that's nothing to do with someone doing some interior design. That's a guy picking grapes. So that's how we pick grapes. So this is on the edge of the vineyard. And on the edge of the vineyard where the trees mark the boundaries, we have vine completely unkept, just growing up into the trees. So it looks like an apple orchard. And these guys are harvesting the grapes up in the trees, bringing them down pretty carefully on ladders, bringing them down on the bins, and then taking them off into the wine.
Okay, wait a minute. I want to clarify this, though. Are you saying that the vines are as large as the trees, or the vines are growing into the trees?
Growing into the trees.
Growing into the trees.
Yeah. So at first glance, you think it's the trees.
Right.
Like you think it is actually an apple orchard.
Right.
But it's trees that within them, the vine is just sort of, that's the way they're scaling. Instead of it being a wall,
Yeah.
But again, because
they found their own trellis.
Yeah, that's exactly. Exactly.
A different type of integrity in dappled sunlight.
Totally.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. I think of in and I have never been to Italy, but I've heard stories. And there was a couple vineyards here in Sonoma at one point that had walnut orchards growing in the middle of the vines. And realistically, it's too bad those walnut trees aren't still there, because it used to shade those vineyards for this beating sun on the particular vineyard that I'm talking about. That used to just turn the stuff to raisin immediately.
Right. What vineyard is that?
Over your father farmed it for a while, and over on
That's a list.
on Cherokee Road. That old vine vineyard that's now all houses.
Yes. Yeah.
And this is what are most people in Chile drinking?
Still definitely Cabernet is king. Carmenere as well, because there's a sense of kind of national identity. You know, obviously people are starting to realize that that's kind of like our grape. So there's a bit of, you know, kind of patriotism there. And definitely reds more than whites. Sparkling, domestic sparkling is growing. Pais is, you know, anywhere in the world is definitely still niche. But at the same time, like I said, I'm proud of pushing the more niche wines, because that's where the stories are. That's where the fun stuff is. And also, I would say as well, and I don't want to be disrespectful of Chile, because I love it, and my wife's Chilean. But you know, a lot of Chilean wines maybe aren't so food friendly. They're kind of what I call more chunky. They're more kind of full retail. They're more for, you know, everyday consumption. But these are wines that, you know, in a good way, conversation starters. You know, but also really gastronomic. You know, the acidity on this is phenomenal.
It's crazy.
It's got a lovely mid palate weight to it as well. You know, it's got some fleshiness to it. You know, so it's, you know, I try to keep it simple when I describe a wine. And I know you guys talk about kind of leaving the stuffiness behind, and I'm a big fan of that. You know, I think, you know, break down the walls and keep wine simple, engage with more people. But it's like, has a little bit of the zippiness of a Sauvignon Blanc, but definitely has way more of the weight. So it's kind of like got a slightly unoaked Chardonnay style to it, and even got a little bit of that kind of Viognier sense as well.
Is it? Do you know? Is it ML positive?
Ooh, you've got me there. I don't know. No idea.
Meaning, does it go through ML?
Yeah, did it go through ML?
Oh, okay.
I'm picking up a little bit of butteriness in the aromatics only.
Yeah.
No, there's a little like there is some richness on the palate of like before I was, you know, like, was there Chardonnay in here? There is some of those like characteristics. It's not,
and my nose is not 100% right now, but that's the one thing that stood out was that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's delicious.
I would say it's my guess would be some.
Yeah.
Some mallow, but not full mallow to like get that mouthfeel.
Right.
Also, I'm so familiar with Blanc de Noir Pais that I'm clearly speaking from those places of expertise here.
Confidence is everything.
The confidence of a white guy with the podcast. Got it.
But when they first came over, wasn't it all Pais that was on the property that they?
So yeah, predominantly Pais. Yeah, exactly. So anything. So we do have Cabernet, we do have Carmenere as a winery, and those are certainly like much younger vines. 15 to 20 years old. So yeah, predominantly Pais vineyard. Yeah.
And it sort of got grafted over.
Yes.
To
and there's some areas that are, that where the Pais just wasn't really giving any yields, or just needed to be changed out. So yeah, there's a lot of that. And then I'll be honest as well. There's to an extent, commercial decisions whereby how much Pais can you realistically sell. Yeah. There's a lot of the decision making from an agricultural point of view. I would say now Chile's got it way more balanced, where the agricultural guys are making the decisions in unison with people who are commercial or the owners. But back in the 90s, harvest in Chile used to be decided by some guy in an office in Santiago. It's like, hey, it's March the 3rd, let's start picking because we need to turn those grapes into dollars. And now it's not the case. Chile's come a long, long way. The technology helps there, but also because I think Chile's realized, got to make quality wines, and that starts in the vineyard. I mean, it sounds cheesy, but that's true. It doesn't matter what level wine you're making. You've got to listen to the guys who are out there in the vineyards,
And Mission is not really susceptible to mildew or any sort of mildew pressure?
And it's very drought resistant as well. So this is all dry farmed. It's naturally kind of gone really deep. But obviously old vines anyway, they've had time to find their root system. Yeah. This is on granite soils mainly, a little bit of quartz as well. But yeah, it's a grape that was planted for a reason for communion wine. Just kind of let it grow. And everyone can go to mass and be happy. As I said, if
One day
I
a
would,
week.
I would have taken religion more seriously if this had been, my communion.
Yeah. Well, and that was the same reason that it was here in California, and it's called Mission. It was just being used as sacramental wine and used in the churches, and makes sense.
Yeah.
What's the next wine?
So the next one, we'll be sticking with the Salvaje wine, but we're going into, I guess, like I said, there are plenty of people who don't know whether Pais will be red or white, so that's kind of fun as well in some ways when you have a Blanco. It's not prejudged, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I'm sorry if I missed that. So there's Mission Blanco?
No.
There is
was
Listan Blanco, but this is nothing to do it. So this is
Okay.
100%. This is exactly the same grape, just light press,
Right.
and just so made in a white wine style.
It would be such an evil one to like take to a blind tasting or something. Just fuck with people so hard.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to say what kind of mainstream grape they try to sell.
Yeah, totally.
I feel like most people would go down the unoaked Chardonnay route.
I mean, that was kind of
That's the closest you're going to get.
but maybe some like Italian whites in there a little bit. Or and maybe Spanish white is probably where my head was going.
maybe a little almost Albarino sort of but it's just not got quite the same kind of just full on salinity that I associate at least with Albarino.
Oh, this is really pretty.
So this is the Pais Salvaje. So this is the red. So exactly the same part of the vineyard. So again, these guys up on ladders, picking the grapes. And this wine for me, so the third wine, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but the third wine is more what I would say just a really easy drinking, juicy Pais. But what I love about this Salvaje is actually it shows that in the right hands with the right winemaking in the old vines areas, Pais can make some pretty complex wines as well. So I think that's the biggest challenge. Like once people say, okay, it's mission grape, but if you think about anyone who has ever been and tasted communion wine, it's normally pretty basic. I mean, maybe you're not. I don't know many people who are there at the altar, sort of giving it a full-on tasting note and giving it some points. But definitely this is an example of a much more complex wine. It's world class in that respect.
Ooh. What's the like alcohol? What's the pick date difference between what they do for the Blanc de Noir and making it into these wines? Are they picking it similar? It also sounds like picking it must take forever with the ladders and the trees. So they're just picking it and making it as they go.
It's pretty similar. And the other thing as well is just because of the nature of old vines and kind of fruit set, there is an element of the Pais Blanco kind of coming from those wines that haven't really full on rouged out. So there's sort of softer color as well.
So there's a little field sorting kind of thing happening out there.
Yeah, exactly. So that also helps in terms of the styles.
And it's only on the edge of the vineyard that they're growing up into the trees. So, I mean, you have a normal looking type vineyard, although it's all bush vine.
Yeah.
So do they just naturally get large?
Yeah, it's just like I say, it's just
crawling
unkept and just leave it. There's an element of pruning just because there's only so far ladders can go, but aside from that, it's really just trying to.
You climb up the ladder to the top, you prune where you get there, and that's where the fruit will be the next year.
Bart, what were those vines that we saw in Buddha's Dharma when we were there with Hardy that one day? They were like 8 feet, 10 feet tall.
Yeah, that was Carignan.
Okay.
And, that pruning is what's commonly referred to as the Lodi ladder.
Right.
Right. And it's just a head pruned. It's what wants to be a bush vine, but nobody stops it.
Yeah.
Right. So there's Phil, you would talk about you have to cut that cane out of the center of it to make a goblet. Right. And if you don't do that, you end up just growing straight up, and then you start growing the ladder.
There's a bunch of like if you drive Madrone Road, I don't know if it's still pruned like that, but some of those old vines right along Madrone Road had a pretty classic ladder.
That's the stuff that the Bundschuh zone, the Abbott's Passage.
Right.
But that's not even like close to a Lodi ladder if you go to Lodi or if you were up at Buddha's Dharma.
Because they get 10 feet tall.
Yeah, I mean, those are still reasonably, stop at about 4.5, 5 feet tall. The ones up there were 7 and 8 feet tall.
Yeah, it's almost like sitting under a tree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. And who did? I mean, OSHA obviously
Does not exist.
Yeah.
I mean, that's making wine that you would have to pick with ladders in California because of our like workmen's like it's like the problem with our the problem with like our olive oil. Like when we pick olives, it's way more expensive for workman's comp than when we pick grapes because of the ladders. So when you if you were busting out ladders to harvest grapes, this would triple the price of that bottle or something, maybe more.
Are you saying that you have to pay more in workman's comp fees
for different tasks, and when it involves ladders, it like doubles the price?
That's crazy.
And that's purely from a sort of health and safety.
Yeah, exactly. Just because
Danger.
people who fall off ladders get hurt more than when they fall off of just fall, I guess.
Being the devil's advocate, anyone ever fall during?
I don't, not that I know of.
Yeah. Well, and all those regulations are coming
harvest
down anyway.
of grapes is way more dangerous. Like actually, tractors and knives and early mornings and
I know. I want to see it
relatively
sometime, I've seen videos of different ways of harvesting olives. Where there's the one where they put like a big canopy under it, and then they just kind of beat it with these, or the tree shaker. You have a thing that just like vibrates the whole thing. Yeah. So
lately we're using these like, but like they're powered rakes, so they're like video podcast finger moving. Look to the camera. Oh wait, there's no camera. That sort of like knock them off, and then we sort through with a leaf blower. Like we'll dump the olives into a bin slowly with the leaf blower, sort of like blowing the leaves out before it goes.
It's almost like you have an optical sorter.
Yeah,
but
sort
it's
of
a guy with a leaf.
It's a guy with a leaf. It's a DIY. very, very DIY.
And is there a big difference between what's on the very bottom of the trees and like what's in the top? And are you thinning? Sorry, I'm a little fascinated with this. Are you thinning out some of the leaf structure from the trees to get more sun on the grapes?
That we don't do any canopy management on the trees themselves, no. So it's
What kind of trees are they?
That's a good question. I was asked this the other day and I don't know. It's embarrassing. I'm very, very
What time is it in Chile?
I know. It's really find right? Exactly.
Yeah.
And I apologize for not knowing, but yeah, no, it's there's like in general kind of minimum intervention in that respect, and it's kind of like obviously if there's some bunches that are a little bit lower and there's some that are higher, it's just kind of like wherever they're almost cropping up, obviously we try to prune where we can control it so they're not going so high that we can't get to them.
And it's got to be a two-person thing where one person is trimming the other and you're just throwing them down into someone that's holding a bin or something.
Exactly. Yeah. Or the other option is, which is I've definitely seen as well, is like you kind of have the bin, but a smaller bin, like kind of attached waist-wise. But
kind of like
on your ladder.
And then you can, and then exactly. So someone actually in Texas yesterday was saying that I told them I was doing this podcast, and they said, they'd like me to do the podcast, but they would like me to be up the ladder while I'm doing
the ladder?
And I was like,
we can get a ladder. We can find a ladder.
I am a classic man who can't multitask, and you're asking me to do a podcast, pick some grapes, climb a ladder, and catch them in a bin.
Yeah.
Something's going to suffer, probably the podcast or maybe just my body.
Well, the podcast will be fine. Let me tell you, we'll be all right. Low standards.
Might be worth a video for it, though, to watch me falling. Yeah.
Do you think there is video, though, or on the
I think we're just going to have to find a sponsor to send us.
We have photos, but I definitely want to get some videos. And I mean, again, kind of slightly more marketing point of view.
Yeah.
But I actually think instead of having a back label that sort of says, this is what you're going to taste, just have a QR code with a video of people picking like
talk
that.
To
really
really
cool.
That's going to be way better than any tasting.
You just go with the best story. Marketing should never get in the way of the truth. Yeah. Right? Like it's all about the story.
Other way around.
We know what you mean.
I meant exactly.
Yeah, you meant it. I think that we should talk to the Chilean Wine Authority and sponsor a podcast junket down to watch this harvest. No? Do you know anybody?
Absolutely.
25 years in?
I'll be sending the link out so that
they're like these guys. No, is Levy Dalton available?
Exactly. If you don't suffer from vertigo, you can sign a very easy waiver. You don't get paid more, so you can come and pick.
Sorry.
I love the earthiness on this wine. This is so great.
What I love about this wine is, if you have tasted some Pais, and actually when we taste the third one, you'll definitely get the taste profile from the third one, which, as I say, is a little bit more. Not going to say one-dimensional, but it's just much more easy drinking and juicy. You get that here, But I always talk about this crazy sort of bedrock element. But there's just like this kind of mineral earthiness to it. It's got so much kind of depth in flavor. I get very kind of overly visual when I taste wine, and obviously not great for a podcast again. But what I mean is like when you can actually taste a wine and you can feel the roots have gone deep. Yeah, I really feel like there's the depth to this wine that kind of goes, wow, yeah, this is old vine. This has gone deep. It's got a depth to it. Yeah, you can really taste the earth within it, but it's a very nice earthiness. Like it's not a sort of dirty earthiness. It's just like a
no. And it's still it's very fresh tasting, but still has that earthy and slight funk.
Yeah, it's definitely a little bit more funk on the nose, though. The palate's actually very clean.
Yeah.
And it's also got really nice savory element to it as well. It's got sort of black tea, beetroot sort of flavors going on as well.
Cool.
Within the fruit. So
we've had pictures.
How do they treat this after they pick it? It goes in and so what are you aging in?
So we're no aging at all. This is all concrete tanks and native yeast in terms of fermentation as well. So just right the way through the whole process. Very little intervention in the vineyard, very little intervention in winemaking.
So is it almost like a Beaujolais? Like it's
exactly.
It's getting
and to be honest, a lot of the times when we're out selling, we're saying this is Chilean Beaujolais. This is a great example of that. It's got that sort of taste profile to it, definitely. And being from Chile often is an even more affordable price. So
I will say that you might want to look into some more modern ladders. Some of these ladders look back to the
certainly before we get there to climb up on them.
Well, but then the wine will be more expensive.
BYOL.
There you go.
BYOL. Bring your own ladder.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't look as cool if you had like a Stanley ladder.
Right. No, the like pounded together 2x4 ladder is.
These are the same ladders we use to paint the winery. It's all about making the maximum harvest. We don't want ladders sitting around for 6 months of the year. So.
And do you when you do tastings or introduce people to this wine, do you recommend them serving it slightly chilled?
Yes.
Is that a conversation?
Yeah, definitely. I really do believe that. I think there is obviously the great thing is, being very honest, there's a market for chillable reds right now anyway.
Yeah.
But actually, there are some wine styles that I'm not convinced that they are chillable reds, but I think Pais really is. You have to be careful with Pais because even though it's got very thin skins, there is quite a lot of tannic presence in it. So if you do chill it too much,
it's got some grip to it.
There is some grip, exactly. So if you do chill it too much, the tannins can kind of overcome the quite soft, light fruit.
Right.
But I definitely think, just from a stylistic point of view, the acidity is brighter when it's just slightly chilled.
Yeah.
Obviously, again, being a Brit, I'm a Celsius guy, but I always recommend Chilean wine in general should be served at like 16 Celsius. So sorry if someone wants to do the conversion, but I actually think Chilean.
Hey Siri, what's 16 Celsius and whatever we use?
I think it's
16 degrees Celsius is equivalent to 60.8 degrees Fahrenheit.
That's about what I keep my red wines at home in my fridge.
But I just believe, like, if you're drinking, again, like more kind of mainstream or full-bodied Chilean reds, because of the alcohol content, and these are much lighter in alcohol as well, but normally Chilean reds are 13.5 upwards, and most would be closer to 14. If you serve that at 60 Fahrenheit, then you're going to get less of the burn anyway, and they're going to be way more drinkable.
Yeah.
And then Pais, you can go down a couple more degrees.
Yeah.
And you'll get that freshness. Obviously makes it more dangerous, as I call it. But fresh reds are
crushable.
Awesome. Yeah, exactly. Crushable reds. Yeah, and that's my style as well.
Yeah.
Apart from selling the stuff, I love this wine.
Amazing.
House wine.
Yeah, works.
All right.
Tell us now, why is this so different?
Right?
Yeah. So this is not the Salvaje. This is the Pais Viejo. So Viejo is old. If you refer to someone as Viejo, it also means just an old dude, an old man. And you can even in English, obviously, you can say my old man for your father. Mi viejo is my father. But this is technically all of our Pais is old, but we separate this. So the Salvaje is from the laddered part of the vineyard. So completely wild. And this is still on trellis, but it's bush vines. So they're lower to the ground. There's no health and safety here. And the way we make it is different as well. So we're looking for a more juicy, more kind of yeah, voluptuous, but it's still got all that.
Now I need a paper towel.
Yeah.
Would you spill?
I'm literally drooling. I mean, this just activates your saliva glands. It's just my mouth is watering so hard.
I haven't even tasted it. I just want to keep smelling it for a while.
Yeah.
This
This is a great introduction.
food wine.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is insanely pricey. We've been doing a lot of BTG placements with this.
Yeah.
And again, it's also a wine where you can get value, but actually also we were talking about it before we kind of sat down here. But I think Chile as a category is not being pushed by the trade because it's hard to find value in it.
You mean at the Cabernet level?
Yeah, I just think there's a little bit of this sense that there's a kind of race to the bottom, and therefore, if you're stocking a Chilean wine, whether it's on your wine list or in a retailer, you're watching how many points you can make to keep up with your neighbor or someone else. But that's because it's Cabernet or maybe Carmenère. But with Pais, one of the reasons we're also getting some really great success with it is we have no issue. Like, make your money with it. Like, go back to making money with Chile. If people are making money with Chile, they'll stock more interesting wines from Chile. Right. So it's a kind of, for me, it's like, that's the cycle we need to push. Go back to Chile. If Chile's making money for people in the trade, Chile will become a category again. Right. At the moment, I feel like it's not so much, a lot of people say, consumers aren't asking for it. Yeah, but consumers will start to ask for it if the trade stocks more of it. So it's it's kind of like, depends on which way you analyze it. But I believe there's kind of like a double-edged sword here. It's definitely consumers, but it's also because people are not necessarily refreshing their Chilean section to an extent because they're like, I'm not going to make as much money on it. I can make money on Greek Assyrtiko because that's lesser known. Yeah. Hey, you've got Pais here. We can definitely do something with it. So.
But Mission has seen a little resurgence here in California. And the thing is, we don't have a lot of it. And so you can sort of fill in one of those slots, a BTG placement at a restaurant, and it just requires a little bit of education with the staff.
Exactly. And again, I think, we're definitely noticing a trend as well. I think if you look in certainly more traditional retail, it's still, country of origin related, but there is more of a move now to sort of, list things by style, or point people in directions much more based on sort of food pairing, etc. So here, I wish it wasn't the case, but I've been doing this for such a long time that sometimes find it's easier to sell the really interesting and great wines from Chile, taking Chile off the table. I really wish it wasn't the way, but actually, when you say the word Chile, especially like in our job with Bella and I, if we go into an account and if you say Chile, people often want to talk about price. They don't even want you to crack the bottle. Right. Whereas if you crack the bottle first, there's no way someone's not going to say, this is awesome, this is exciting, this is interesting. And then they're pleasantly surprised by the price because they've judged it as a wine, not as a wine from Chile. Like it's nuanced, but that's the way I feel it. That's what I think Chile does need to do better, like in many ways. And then we can go back to shouting about Chile, but right now we just need to be shouting about great wines. Kind of taking origin a little bit out of the equation. And Pais allows us to do that as well. Yeah.
Do you guys know what the menu is for tonight? What sort of food you're going to be having?
I have the menu in my bag. I can grab it for you if you want to see.
I'd love to hear about it because I'm super curious about because these would be such great pairing wines. Yeah.
I mean, there's so much savory in this. Yeah. And almost like a lobster bisque kind of aromatic or something. I'm almost
thinking like an apricot curry sauce with shrimp and bananas and strawberries and sliced almonds. Yeah.
That's the thing. You can kind of go off in
so many different directions. Yeah. Do you think it helped with Dom Melchor getting a
definitely
big
100%. I mean, anything like that can only help Chile. Yeah. And I also think again, hopefully my Chilean peers aren't going to hate me, but I think sometimes Chile is too quick to be overly competitive amongst ourselves. Like we should be bigging ourselves up as a category. Like we should be competing with Australia rather than competing amongst ourselves. So if Dom Melchor wins, number one wine of the year, we should be celebrating that as an industry, like as Chileans.
Yeah, it just brings
rather
attention.
Than sort of going, but it's Conchi Toro, they are the number one. What do you no envy. Yeah, that's amazing. It's great for Chile. I can't see even like 1% of that being bad news. It's got to be celebrated, and I think it's positive.
Look, the second course. The second course, Brian. Yeah. By the way, they weren't on our podcast before they got that number one wine in the world. Just saying, throwing it out there. Maybe.
There's a track record here. Well, we look forward to coming
pressure.
Back next year.
No pressure.
Might have had something to do with it. Sea urchin panna cotta.
Yeah.
Is there still tickets for the dinner tonight?
Yeah. Reservations are still open.
Oh, man. Caramel flan or mango mousse. Okay. And so with the...
So they aren't featuring the Pais Salvaje. They already have that one by the glass, but they brought in the others for the dinner tonight.
Salmon tartare tart. Oh, yeah. Couscous, hearts of palm. Basil sauce and enoki mushroom. Yeah, something with some earth is going to showcase the fruit.
Any mushroom is gonna go fantastically with Pais in general, regardless of whether it's the Salvaje or the Viejo.
See, and Brazilian fish stew with mussels and coconut sauce. Yeah. All right.
Exactly.
I'm on board.
I'm really
there this evening.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good thing people aren't listening to this and going out and grabbing your spot before you can get it, Brian.
So those are the 3 Pais wines that we're producing, and like I say, as a winery, we do also produce Cabernet. We will have one Cabernet towards the end, but here in the US as well, we made a conscious decision to set our stall out with Pais rather than kind of trying to push the Cabernet, the Carmenere, the Sauvignon Blanc. We sell those as the Bouchon brand in some other markets and leading with that. But I just feel like, if you look at the US market, it's a huge market, but it's also saturated. And
really?
Yeah, really? Not that any market isn't right now, let's be honest. But I just think, this is a completely different angle. Like this is and I also again, probably my crazy sadomasochistic side, but Chile is so poorly represented in on-premise that it's insane. And these are great food wines.
So I think to bring Bella back into the conversation, where are these wines available? Not necessarily at a restaurant, but for people to pick up off the shelf that they can take home.
Honestly, right now, not many places, but hopefully after our 2 days together, they'll be more widely available.
I mean, some wine shops here in the Bay Area, something like that.
Yeah. We're showing London Market in San Francisco. There'll be one. There's Flatiron in San Francisco as well. Flatiron. Yeah, we're showing to them. They were super excited about the wine, so hopefully they'll be carrying some soon.
Cool.
Well, this will be out in 3 weeks, so maybe we'll get into the show notes where you get some placements and tell people out. And then there's definitely buyers and industry folks who listen to this show, so get a hold of Bella and get some Pais on your list, bro.
Yeah. I can send you guys a more comprehensive list of where it's available up here as well.
Cool. No, I just want to buy some for myself.
Yeah.
Well, no, I think we're gonna talk to Bella after the show. Okay, see if we can get a little bulk discount going.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Because we need a case of that Viejo around the tasting room offices, obviously.
Awesome. Yeah, that's the distribution we're looking for as well. Like the cheesy way I put it is like where there's a conversation, but it's also about picking your battles. Like because this is a hand sell. You need to be in an environment where people are going to be talking about it as well, especially initially. Hopefully, 5 years time, I don't have to even present Pais. Maybe it's the next big thing. Mission Grape, everyone's talking and raving about it. Yeah. But let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Sonoma is a place where people are talking about it, though. Yeah. Scribe makes sparkling and also maybe a still mission. All the things that they're playing with mission over at Bedrock University,
and Pax University,
and Pax. They're doing some mission up in.
There's people there, Pax U, and even Patrick. I think right.
That'd be an epic basketball game. Oh. Pax U versus Bedrock U.
Yeah, it would.
March Madness,
or some sort of like a water balloon fight. I think might be better.
There we go. Yeah,
I don't know if we want to watch them actually play sports. Oh. All right, what are you pouring next?
I'm excited about this.
Yes, this is Canto Sur. So Canto Sur is a standalone wine. There's no range of Canto Sur. So first of all, which I also think, again, like with my knowledge of how the US works, and it's an easier kind of way to fit into the kind of distribution system. When you have a range of wines, people are like, well, I can't remember whether they do a Sauvignon, do they do a Carmenere, do they, This is Canto Sur. So it's just one wine. Means Song of the South or Southern Song. And it's kind of like our tribute, if you like, to the varietals that we think we're growing the best on our estates down in Maule. So this is 50% Carmenere. So again, if you like, it's to an extent what Chile is starting to become more known for, at least because it's the most, widely grown, not widely grown grape. We grow more Cabernet, to be fair, but the most unique grape, the sort of Bordeaux's lost varietal, and then 25% Carignan and 25% Pais. So still Pais within the blend. This wine, can be slightly chilled as well, even though it's got 50% Carmenere in the blend. And again, here there's still no oak, still pretty minimum intervention, and just love the kind of style of the wine here, the winemaking. When we sell this in on premise, I always say it's like one of those classics where if you have someone comes in and you're serving a table and they say you have one person who wants more full-bodied and the other person wants lighter. This is kind of that perfect hybrid. It's that kind of like, you're not going to upset anyone. Yeah. It's got that Carmenere structure, a little bit more, full-bodied, but then you got the Pais fleshiness and juiciness. And Carignan is great for the acidity.
Carignan, totally familiar with.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what is the will you tell the Carmenere story a little bit and sort of like, I know it's a Bordeaux, but sort of lost in Bordeaux and then rediscovered in Chile. What's that?
Exactly.
Was it in Jay Bouchon's suitcase when it came over?
We had in Hawaii, the winery there, Tedeschi, it was all Carmenere. And we made the white, the red, the sparkling, and the dessert wine all from that one grape. And I think you basically go along your parallel, and look at other places in the world that are able to grow grapes, and for some reason that's what they latched onto in Hawaii.
Right. Wow. Okay. Yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah. I mean, Carmenere. I've tried Carmenere. I've read that I believe some of Napa is experimenting with Carmenere, which makes sense to me from a climatic point of view. There's some in Italy. I've tried a Ukrainian Carmenere. Yeah. Less said about that, the better. But Carmenere obviously is more often than not, at least in terms of labeling, is from Chile. And as you say, it's this sort of Bordeaux varietal that's been rediscovered. Nice little anecdote to give you an idea is when I first worked in Chile, I used to get involved in some of the blending sessions with the winemakers. And they used to say to me, "Oh, this is the blend for Merlot." And I was like, "Do you have a stutter? Why are you saying Merlot twice?" And they were like, "This is where we know we're making Merlot." Whereas Merlot, said once, was still potentially some Carmenere in the blend. So I always tell that story to give you an idea of like literally, how jumbled it was. I like it as a story. That's not that Chile was trying to lie about it. It was just, initially when it was discovered in the 1980s. I can never say the word correctly, but I got a leaf specialist. I believe it's an
ampliographer.
Thank you, ampliographer. I still can't say it.
I feel better about my inferiority complex to British English when you can't say things. So keep it up.
There you go.
I need it.
We could come up with plenty of other words I can't pronounce. But yeah, so that was discovered in one of the sort of Chilean vineyards. And then, again, being very, very honest about what Chile did, I believe that there was a classic moment where the marketing departments got way more excited about it than the winemakers did. And so Chile started pushing Carmenere. And that's where, especially here in the US, a lot of people were like, oh, it's just green bell pepper. And I always say, bad Carmenere is green bell pepper overdose. Good Carmenere is white pepper spice. So there will always be a sort of subtle vegetal or spicy element to it. It's quite soft tannins. It makes very, very beautiful, elegant wines. And if you speak to some people in Bordeaux as well, the Carmenere that they still have, a lot of people say, oh, my granddad has or had Carmenere. When phylloxera came in and they decided obviously to replant, they didn't replant most of the Carmenere because it was a pain in the ass for them. It was a really hard grape for them to ripen. It needs a long hang time. And that was the big difference in Chile. If you're picking Carmenere with Merlot, you're getting green bell pepper.
Right.
It's going to have that sort of tomato leaf vegetal character. So Carmenere for us is the latest into the winery, with some Petit Syrah that we sometimes have as well. But those would be the two late growers or late picked varietals for us.
And how did the Carignan is sort of an odd choice for Chile because it's pretty susceptible to mildew, right?
Yeah, but Carignan's really interesting. It's got a similar story to Pais, slightly more recent. But Carignan, and definitely south of France, Carignan is more like a sort of bulk wine. It's like what I call a trucker's wine, so it's just
great
traveling
acid,
around in vats and just making wine. In Chile, it's nearly all old vine. So it's a lot of plantings from the 1950s, 60s. So you're getting real character, real delightful sort of floral notes with a little bit of that gnarliness as well that Carignan can have. I love the character of it. But because it's old vines, it's more balanced. Like it's got way more complexity. Again, this is dry farmed as well. So it's kind of got natural vigor and it's, almost become, if you like, kind of immune, over the years as well. Like it's growing healthily. We throw 25% in the blend. And Carignan now, to give you an idea, is actually there's a kind of mini movement in Chile called Vigno, Vigno, which is even some of the big wineries. Their winemaker is making it has to be minimum 85% Carignan, has to be a minimum certain price. Yeah, it has to be dry farmed. It has to be a certain price point. And some of those wines are awesome. I mean, Carignan on its own is not dissimilar to Tannat, for example. It can. I've done all 32, I think it is, Vignos from Chile in a tasting once. Yeah,
and that was a minimum 2-year aging.
Yes,
right.
There's lots of little small things that have to take place. There's a minimum, FOB price or ultimately retail price.
Yeah, how does that work? So it's kind of like Chateauneuf du Pape, where if you want to put the crest on the bottle, right, then you have to adhere to the specific standards. So then who?
So it's actually run. The guys who are running it are the winemakers themselves. So and that's going back to what I was saying earlier about how Chile needs to collaborate more. The winemakers are awesome at it. It's me, like the commercial guys, we're the problem. I'd like to think I'm not.
Yeah.
I definitely try to encourage my Chilean peers to look at the global picture and less infighting. Right. But the winemakers are brilliant at collaborating. They're on the phone to each other all the time. We had fires like you guys did in this part of the world in 2017. They all helped out. They were all like, Christ, we haven't had to deal with this before. Like, what are we doing? On the phone to people up here in Napa as well, to Australia. So the winemakers are, they're the great guys who see it much more as wine and like, let's collaborate.
Yeah.
That's.
So they all sort of just got together and decided we're going to basically set a standard. For the area.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's and Carignan is really only in Maule as well. So. That's where it grows the best. It's this kind of secano, so Maule area, dry farm.
Will you sort of give us a quick Chilean geography lesson? Where
and temperature.
Yeah, is it the whole thing? Pretend like we know nothing. I'm sure that'll be difficult. Hard to fathom.
Starting from very basics. Some people like me, maybe not even aware, but Chile is. If you look at a map, it just looks fascinating. Long, thin country down in South America, crazy coastline. So it's about 4,000 miles of coast, so around 7,000 kilometers of coastline. Unbelievable seafood as a result. Highest.
I love that he's and favorite hotel.
Sponsored to you today by. But also unbelievably sort of locked away. So, in fact, just if you ever go to Chile, if you fly into Chile with an apple in your hand, you could potentially be arrested. I always crack the joke that you're more likely to be arrested for having an apple than an AK-47. Like they would literally be like, "What are you doing? That could have a disease, and you're going to kill all our agriculture." Don't travel with either to Chile, but but that's an aside. But
keep the AKs at home, guys.
Exactly. So the Atacama Desert in the north. So that's actually drier than the Sahara. It's the driest desert in the world. That's the northern sort of part of Chile. There are some vineyards from the Elqui Valley, which are bordering the edge of the Atacama Desert. Unbelievable soil type there. Some of that has had some struggles. Limery as well, which is the northern areas, in terms of more recently with water table. So some of those vines have been picked of late, just because there's not enough water. So that's a sad state of affairs. Probably something to do with global warming for sure. Then you go down to the middle third, which is where all of Chile's agriculture is concentrated, and obviously viticulturally as well. And the whole time tempered by the Pacific. So the Pacific coast with the Humboldt Current, which comes up from the Antarctic areas. And this kind of prevents the rest of Chile being a desert, pretty much. So this keeps the temperatures down. We have unbelievable thermic amplitude, so that's the day-night fluctuation.
Yeah.
I would say, we can have sometimes up to nearly 100 Fahrenheit in the day, but you'll sleep well at night. It'll get down to 60, 70, regularly. So that's ideal. It's not like I once sold wine in Lagos in Nigeria. That was 100 in the day and 100 at night. You're not sleeping well.
Wait, you were selling what wines in Lagos?
I was selling, Santa Carolina in Lagos. Yeah, it's.
They just sent you wherever they didn't want to go.
Exactly. I promised my mother that I wouldn't sell in Africa again. It was a pretty interesting experience.
Yeah, I just watched a documentary on Netflix about the whole Black Hawk Down thing in Somalia, and I was like, holy shit. Yeah. I can't imagine.
It's there's a lot of informal trading, put it that way.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
So where are these vineyards
So
in that
Maule.
sort of like
We're
the
in
long
Maule,
skinny
so Maule
country?
is definitely, Maule is southern Chile, southern within the middle third of agriculture, obviously. So the very south of Chile is fjords, is Patagonia. Actually,
Tierra del
there's a point
Fuego.
where the Ruta 5, so the Pan American highway just stops, and then you have to get on boats to continue working your way down south in Chile. But above that is where you have the Maule Valley, for example. So it's about 180 miles south of Santiago. It's where Chile is wider. At its thinnest, Chile can be as low as 45, 50 miles wide. Whoa. That's further north. But in Maule, it's pretty wide. Okay. So it's a big valley. It's an area where there is a lot of bulk wine made. There's a lot of, it's kind of like the garden of Chilean viticulture. Yeah. But it's also all these old vines. So Pais, Carignan in particular. So it's got the best of both worlds. That's a little snapshot of Chile's viticulture. And the other thing I would say as well is, because it's long and thin, a lot of people look at it and say, okay, so that's the variation. And of course, there is differences naturally between the north and the south. But actually, it's amazing. The other influence for me is very much about either you're coastal or you're in the Andes foothills, because that's where the cooler areas are as well. So if you're a chef, I would sort of say if you're right in the Central Valley area, that's a bit like a ping microwave. That's where just big fruit, big vigor, churning out a lot of the sort of more basic wines from Chile. But if you have stuff that's slightly towards the coast, especially where there's a very old range of hills or mountains called the coastal range, then that's great soil, amazing soil, very volcanic, granite. Or if you go up into the Andes, then also as well. The challenge with the Andes is it's so cold in Chile because of the Pacific Ocean, and the Andes on that side just go up quickly. So there's not many. Mendoza in Argentina is a plateau. It's a high altitude plateau. So that's great for ripening grapes. But in Chile, there's no real plateaus. You just go up. So if you ski in Chile, it's just winding roads up into some pretty high areas for skiing. So, but we put weather stations in high altitude in Chile, and you can even make ice wine. You'd be picking, in thermal gear.
Right.
Yeah. So when we say close to the Andes, it's close, but it's still foothills.
Yeah.
Piedmont rather than right up there.
I mean, it kind of looks like it's the halfway between from the mountains to the beach.
Yes. Yeah. It's one of those amazing places where you genuinely can ski and then head to the beach for a pisco sour or a glass of Pais and watch the sunset, or even have lunch. Someone asked me the other day, and I probably embellished it. You could definitely do it in 4.5 hours. If you had a sports car and you were crazy, you could probably do it in 3.5. But yeah, you can, as I say, get a couple of pieces in the morning and head there for a late lunch on the Pacific Ocean. Beautiful country, unbelievable country. Can't encourage people enough to get down there and see it.
I'm just looking at the sticker here. It looks like Wine and Spirits Top 100 2021. Top 100 wineries in the world. Yeah.
Bouchon, to be fair, I have my days with the whole stickers on wines. At the end of the day, we submit our wines to awards. So if we're going to win, we might as well put them on there. Otherwise, why are we submitting them? But at the same time, based on the kind of channels of distribution we're looking at here in the US, I feel like they're less necessary, especially on trade. A lot of SOMs are not a big fan of seeing them, and I totally understand that. But at the same time, even just from a benchmarking point of view, some of the critics that are both US and UK based who are coming down to Chile once a year and tasting through a lot of wine, Bouchon always performs really, really well. Yeah. And definitely the Pais, they love it. The whole angle on the Pais as well.
I'm loving this more and more as it warms up, and I like when wine tastes like grapes.
Yeah.
Right.
I think of Carignan as sort of like a classic wine that tastes like grape, right?
It's so weird that we never use it as a descriptor when we talk about wines. It's always about other things. But when it tastes like grapes, it's like, it's freaking delicious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the tannins on that Canto Sur as well. You know, they're really well integrated.
Yeah.
It's not aggressive at all. It's very fresh. It's got that. Maule tends to have slightly broader tannins. Maipo, for example, slightly more vertical tannins in terms of sort of taste profile. But I like it, and it's very true to Maule. You know, that's the idea. Like Canto Sur, as I say, this sort of tribute to what we think we're doing down there with our own fruit.
Yeah.
And then we're finishing with the Block Series Cabernet. So this is specific blocks, and this is, if you like, sort of the only like mainstream varietal wine that we're bringing into the US, just because, at the end of the day, in the market, Cabernet is still king. There's still spots on wine lists by the glass for good Cabernet. And what I like about this as well, within a US context, is it's a slightly fresher style of cab. It's, people who might have, plenty of sort of bigger, bolder Cabernets on their offering. This is a chance to have a wine that's a little softer, a little fresher, got some nice elegance.
Thank you. That's what we need.
Yeah, right.
And Cabernet is food-friendly cab.
Yes,
when it's not its own food group and
exactly.
not buried in oak and not all using the same yeast strains to inoculate.
And as I say to some people, order 2 bottles, not 1. Their palate's not shot to bits.
Right. Don't worry about
you're
not getting the money. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And so this is 100% Cabernet.
Yeah, and it's specific blocks, within the vineyard, and this is a little bit more traditional winemaking. So it's commercial yeasts. It's has some French oak. Ooh. It's around 12 months, around 20% is new.
But both pretty unintrusive choices, whatever the oak and the yeast were.
Yeah,
it's not what's coming out.
No, it doesn't kind of go down that sort of vanilla style. It's still got the fruit element to it.
Oh, a piercing herbaceousness.
It's very varietally correct. Varietally correct.
Nice dark fruit.
And this is a 22. So
Dead
this
air means good wine.
Just current release.
Yes. Yeah. Moving to 23 pretty soon. Very soon, actually, down in the winery. But yeah, 22. Best vintages recently in Chile. 21 was stellar. Obviously, that was the Don Melchor number 1, and 21. If you still see 21s on the shelf anywhere, grab them.
Yeah.
18 was a very, very good vintage as well. We're looking forward to 24. I think it's 25. Sorry, 25.
I know.
It's looking good so far. But as I say, still, you ask any of the guys who are out picking or out surveying, they're like, we can't say until, we could still have a frost or some rain. But at the moment, it's looking like a solid. I'm not sure it's going to get up to the 21 level, but it's looking like it's going to be a good vintage.
And what's the percentage wines? So, for example, the wines that we had today, what are you making the most of, or what are you making the least of?
Definitely the cab. So still, even though we would love to be making more and selling
That's
more
your
of the
flagship.
The cab is still the wines that we're producing the most of. In terms of our overall production, we're making about under 500,000 bottles, so like 30,000, 40,000 9-liter cases a year. The Pais Blanco, we make about 250 cases or 500 6-packs a year, and the majority of that's coming into the US. So small is beautiful. And trying to grow and definitely focusing much more on positioning Bouchon within that sort of Pais, B-side Chile, on-trade, food-friendly Chile, which I think is where we've missed a trick as a category. And I'm excited to get out there and convert people, as I say, 1 bottle at a time or 1 sip at a time.
Yeah, I love that B-side Chile.
Yeah.
Did Jasmine just put a sparkling mission on the table?
Sparkling mission on the table.
Yeah.
Oh wow, awesome!
You want to try a mission
Magic.
from?
Definitely.
Do you guys have you ever ventured into the? Well, you said that they were picking for sparkling wines, so you must be doing.
There's a little bit of sparkling. Yeah, we do a little bit. It's nearly all for the domestic market. So for Chile, it's one of the areas that's still in growth. Like a lot of it's flattened out recently. Years ago, Chilean sparkling as a market was very much like everywhere in the world was literally like Christmas, New Year. it was like 99% of your sales were on the 30th of December, for 2 days. Now it's become much more of an aperitif. Obviously, a lot of it's been drunk with Aperol and spritzers and everything else. So that's a big part of it. But there's some good sparkling being made in Chile, but it's also to an extent it's also at a kind of a price point where, again, being Chile, it's competitive, but it's potentially going to come up by the time it's been shipped from Chile. It's going to come up against Prosecco or even Cava.
Yeah.
So the exports are limited to mostly South America rather than further abroad. But there's a kind of a freak market of Japan where Chilean sparkling has a very strong image, and there's a lot of brands being shipping to Japan as well.
Yeah, what are people drinking in Chile? Like people that live there, what are they?
Definitely the still, we have a big barbecue culture. I know the Argentinians are kind of
the RGs and the Aussies. I see it. I see how you throw your rivalries around, Ben.
Los boludos, the RGs, yeah. So, no, the definitely full-bodied reds predominantly, yeah. And I'll be honest, I wish it wasn't the case, but wine culture still has a long way to go in Chile, like compared to other countries. You'd think being a producer, maybe there would be a better understanding. There's better and better restaurants. There's more and more SOMs that can only lead to better wine lists. There's a slowly but surely, from a very, very small base growth of imported wines, which again is awesome. But obviously the majority of the market is Chilean wine, and definitely straight cabs, straight Carmenes, big brands. The big brands are very big in Chile. It's a very, very competitive local market. Yeah. But there's some fun stuff, and
tourism. Do you get people that come visit? Like a wine tasting region, and people come and spend a week. And
definitely. Yeah, the most famous still would be Colchagua. We're not present in Colchagua, but within Maule as well, definitely. And we also have an operation close to Santiago in the Maule Valley, so people could come there. And wine tourism is one of the sides of the business for most wineries that's doing very, very well. It's huge for Brazil. So Brazilians are coming in there. Not even plane loads, let alone bus loads. So it's probably for us about 75% of the tourists that come are from Brazil. And they have an extra advantage for coming to Chile. They obviously come to ski, the more affluent Brazilians, but also their local taxes for wine are crazy. And they're allowed to go back with, I think, 12 bottles, at least 6. I think they're allowed to go back with 12 bottles per person. And so it's interesting. So, for example, actually, you will see that some of the very high-end wines from Chile are not great value in Chile, but it's because they're priced slightly lower than they would be in Brazil.
Wow.
Whereas and again, this is no disrespect to some of the awesome producers from Chile that are producing the kind of high-end brands or the big well-known wines. But for me, like Chile's value is at $20, $30, reasonable. Yeah. That's where Chile is killing it, always has, but no one knows. That's what we need to do, show people that.
Yeah.
A few more people will know after this airs. Bart's mom.
My mom.
My mum will know. She already knew, but she'll be listening.
Right. Yeah.
She's gonna, and then that'll go pretty quickly viral but kind of 80 to 85-year-old ladies in Southeast England.
Well, that's, there's our demo. That's our demo. We're looking to grow that.
They have lots of free time.
Yeah, totally.
In between projects. Yeah, this is a winery that's just down the road.
Mm-hmm. This is I was looking at, it's estate grown, so this is on the property down there, and
you see the similarity in
totally,
the variety.
especially aromatically.
Aromatically, the way it presents on the palate.
Yeah, the taste profile is definitely a lot of that. Yeah, you really feel that place or mission. That kind of soft, supple fruit, nice juiciness.
But I don't think people are planting mission. They're just sort of rediscovering these.
I don't know. I think this must be. I'm gonna text somebody right now. I think this might be a new planting. I don't know if there's old
Bunchu.
I don't think it's old vines on the.
Oh no, it's not. It was all planted.
Really?
Yeah.
So that's gonna have some vigor.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's why it was planted. At the end of the day, the church was after
Right.
as much grapes as possible.
I mean,
for the
it's
community.
planted at that point where.
And
I think it's
assorted other
down
people
the-
that
I was about to say, not just the
benefited
church.
from.
Yeah, let's be honest, there's still plenty of wineries
Yeah.
that run that way.
I mean,
as well.
during Prohibition, they figured it out. Yeah.
Find out how much pull I have at Scribe if I get a response to that text message.
Oh yeah.
We'll see.
I don't have any.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you send it to?
Not in the
I sent it to
demographic.
Adam. Yeah. Mostly it's how quickly he responds to text messages.
Yeah. So where else are you off after you're here in
So this is
Northern
the end
California?
of my 2 weeks. So California finished, then I'm down to Chile. I will be attending Pro Wine, which is a huge trade event over in Germany. Very international. It's 3 days where, like, for a consumer, it's very difficult to explain how huge it is. It's like ridiculous.
It's open to the public, or it's all.
The last day you get some of the German trade come in. They're pretty good drinkers, so it's not that productive from a sales point of view.
Yeah.
But the rest of the time, it's I'll be meeting with people from Japan, from South
Buyers.
Korea,
Yeah.
From all over the world.
from all over. Yeah, so it's one of the big sort of international fairs. So that's a big event for us. I'll be back in the States at some point as well, and then I also do a little bit of traveling over to the Far East. So yeah, spending time on the road, preaching premium Chile, B-side Chile as we call it. Yeah,
B-side Chili.
Yeah, I like that.
It's got some ring to it.
Put that on the clipboard, Brian. for-
B-side Chili.
I find as well, like a lot of people who kind of are willing to even just indulge in different wines, they normally like their music as well. So like, B-side kind of people they
true.
get it.
We should do something with that.
I think you're onto something. I mean, didn't Jeff Bunchu have a thing called B-side? Wasn't that the brand that he did where it came with the CD or whatever? Remember?
No, what was that? What was that called?
I don't know.
Okay, I don't know.
No, but it wasn't B-side. But there was a label that was B-side.
I swear, maybe it was Paso Robles. There was B-side.
B-side would have been a good Bunchu label,
Would have been.
right? Jeff,
Missed opportunity.
if you're listening, when you listen, we got an idea for you.
Yeah, put down all the work you're doing on regenerative.
You use the word B-side, I'm claiming it
Oh
immediately.
no, B-side.
I want
is-
some royalties.
Right, here we go.
So B-side is Brian Wise.
All right, sorry, Jeff, it's taken.
And I'm sorry for using it. Hopefully I'm not going to get sued here.
Nah, you'll be
Yeah,
right.
you're
B-side Chili.
Yeah.
B-side Chili's got a ring to it for sure. It'll be in the show notes.
Well, you guys, thank you so much for
Pleasure.
coming and sharing the stories.
Thanks for having
Yeah,
us.
and seriously, if,
Sake show.
Sake show.
sake show, and
would
then
love
let
that
us know
anymore.
about placements in the area so we
Yeah.
can direct people towards getting some of the wines.
Yeah.
You got
No
it.
pressure. What happens if we have a terrible day? Like, Ben informed us that actually they haven't.
They have
any more
zero
places.
placements.
Yeah, I know. Have you ever talked to the local wine market here, the Sonoma's Best?
I've reached out to him.
Okay, and then Bottle Barn in Santa
Yeah,
Rosa.
Bottle Barn. I've dropped off a few bottles.
Okay,
Yeah.
Can you drop off a few
Absolutely.
of these bottles? Because then
Absolutely.
then we can just buy it there.
Yeah.
Tell Barry you were on the show, and hi Barry. We'd
Hi,
love
Barry.
to.
Hey, Todd, buy these wines.
Yeah,
Todd, Barry.
totally. No, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else you guys want to talk about?
No, perfect. I think we've covered a lot of things off.
Yeah,
Really
good.
appreciate it as well.
No, the
Yeah,
wines are
thank you
great.
so
What I
much.
Yeah.
love doing,
And the mission, I think, that's the standouts.
Yeah.
It's so
100%.
yeah.
100%. Yeah, the cab's a great cab. It's a beautiful cab, but
I liked the blend too. I liked the Contessor a lot,
Yeah.
but the Pais Viejo is blew, and my newly found expertise in Pais Blanc de Noir, both monumental moments.
totally. I appreciate it. Thanks so much to you guys.
Yeah, cool. No, and thank you, Bella.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No problem. I'll see
You guys have a good
again
day.
for the sake show.
The Sake show. Excited.
I know. What are we going to do for that? Will we get
We're gonna get drunk.
Yeah.
Because I
Go eat
was
sushi
just
afterward.
recently talking to someone about sake, and they were saying that they don't think that sushi and sake are a traditional Japanese pairing because it's rice on rice, which they would never do. But they think that that's some kind of like a newer thing that's been started. But all I've ever known eating sushi is sake.
Yeah. I would be so down to bring some like random ass pairings that we could pair sake with. Some out of the box stuff like Mexican food or like Thai food.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm
Right.
down.
I'm excited.
Totally
We're
on
doing
board.
this. I might come
Yeah,
back.
I was gonna say, we'll be back in the States.
Sorry, Natalia, my wife. Yeah, I might be staying for a little bit longer.
Shout outs for you guys.
Oh, there's all kinds of stuff happening. Bart,
Shout out to my mom's birthday yesterday,
shout out
HBD?
Bart's mom.
and Dane Hansen's 18 years old today.
Oh, today,
Today, yeah.
not 3
Happy
weeks from
birthday,
now.
Dane. I know you're not listening.
Does that mean Dane Sellers is 18 years old?
It does. I mean, we didn't actually name it Dane Cellars until we were ready to bottle wine and whatnot.
Right.
But yeah, no, it started very quickly after he was born.
Right.
It was conceptualized.
Terry said, "Get the fuck out of the house and go make some wine."
No, actually, that was not at all how it went. Now it's get the hell out of the house and have you sold all of them?
Right, go sell some. Go get out of the house and go sell some wine.
Let's see. Shout outs. Continuing on with Tuesdays at the Tank. I've definitely had some visitors, could definitely handle some more. So we'll keep that kind of going on. But it's been real fun having people come by and, learning about their experiences drinking wine and whatnot.
You just remind people what Tuesdays from the Tank
Tuesdays
is.
at the Tank, servers, hospitality, tasting room people, chefs, dishwashers, anybody that has an interest in extending your knowledge about wine, I'm inviting you to come to the Tasting Tank and taste my wines. I've been blind tasting.
Brown bagging, blind tasting.
Thank you. One wine at the end just to kind of challenge people to try to figure out what the wine is. Yeah,
Cool.
It's been fun. What else? We're participating in Sonoma Sips.
Yep.
That goes until March 15th. So this may be aired about the time that ends.
Perfect. Perfect timing.
Perfect timing.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
Stuck the landing.
And that's about it for me right now.
What do we want to talk about? What are we allowed to talk
I
about?
can't imagine.
We can talk about
that
anything. Reach for the moon. Tickets are available.
Okay, so Moon Mountain
Moon Mountain
District tasting
tasting.
coming up.
And I think
Where's
we're
it at?
it's at MacArthur Place.
Oh, okay.
It's in the press release.
Okay, cool.
We can't what?
I haven't seen this.
The press release landed
release.
today.
Okay.
And we're gonna do a party the night before.
Yeah.
Supposedly, hopefully with Todd. He hasn't responded, but we're gonna do a party the night before somewhere, which is gonna be all the non-Bordeaux's from.
Have we landed
decided
on a
on-
name?
It's on the Moon Mountain District website. It's
EBC, ABC.
everything but Bordeaux.
Everything
so
but Bordeaux,
sorry,
okay.
Sauvignon Blanc and Semillon.
Okay.
I guess.
Getting kicked out of the party.
Maybe we could make an exception for fuck 'em.
There's enough other things.
Vinyl Sunday news coming soon. We're working on that. Phil sent me is out by the time this airs, Lord willing. Yeah. What else we got?
Vintages from the Vault is
Vintages Vault live.
live. So Zinfandel and Ziggy Stardust.
Right. It's the year of Zinfandel. If you haven't heard.
That's right. It sure is.
I do have one more shout out. By the time this goes, I will have be ready to release my spring wine club.
Ooh.
So got some wines bottled. Still have to label them, of course. And
Yeah. When did you bottle?
Sellers style.
On brand.
Yep, on brand. A little over a week ago.
Okay.
So we bottled up the 2024 rosé of Petite Syrah, which appears to be a Moon Mountain District wine. Believe it or not.
It appears to be.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
According to the map, it's Moon Mountain District.
Okay.
And then
Is Petite Sirah Bordeaux? No, I don't think so.
2023 Carignan from Evangelo.
Oh,
A one-off bottling, one of those impulse, hey, you want to buy some grapes? Yes, sure.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, and absolutely tasting delicious. There were some other wines that maybe I could have bottled before, but it just captured this wine perfectly, so we bottled it.
Nice.
Stopped the aging.
Cool.
So anyway,
Yeah.
so look for that in your emails.
We'll have to do a release show soon.
Yeah. And talk about, I think it'd be fun to talk about 22, 21.
Yeah.
Vintage.
Totally.
and the dramatic difference in the vintages. And if we had a swear jar in Phil's office during 22, how we'd all be rich and retire.
If we had a swear jar in Phil's office at all, we'd all be rich and retired.
All right. All right. That it? You guys have a great dinner. This looks fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Subscribe, review, and drink more Chilean wine.
There you go.
Okay, thank you.
Right on. Thank you.
Really appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Cheers.
You bet.